Hi everyone, today we have a very special episode. Do you want to know what the 2019 vintage of Bordeaux tastes like? Come join me. We're in the Metro in San Francisco and we are doing one of the biggest Bordeaux tasting here annually. We're actually tasting the 2019 vintage, which has been on record as one of the best vintage we've seen in the recent year. Many critics and many other writers who have tasted en premiere have talked about it as comparable to the 1982 and the 2009. So a really quick breakdown of the vintage. The 2019 vintage of Bordeaux has some of the hottest weather on record. A certain part of Bordeaux with a sandy soil does not bear as well as sand, does not hold water as well as clay. So most of the region with a heavier clay soil does really good. But because of the last 2 years in the pandemic, they haven't held the tasting. So this is the first time we get a chance to taste some of the recent vintage of Bordeaux, and a lot of the great wineries are here. So I'm looking forward to tasting with them, and we're going to tell you at the end of this which region are my favorite. Welcome to the 2022 Union de Grand Cru de Bordeaux. This is the once a year where all the Bordeaux winemakers will come around the major city of the United States to taste their recent release with us. I will have to say, through the years, we're starting to see less and less of the ultra high-end Bordeaux, the first growth. They don't come here as much anymore, but it's still an event worth coming to. Let's start with our first interview. Master Sommelier Catherine Fallis is here at the tasting, and let's see what she has to say about the 2019 vintage. Catherine, can you tell us what are some of your favorite Bordeaux producers and regions? Now, if we're here, we should definitely make sure we hit up.
Sure, Angie, so good to see you. It's been a long 2.5 years. It's nice to be out and about and in person again. Union de Grand Cru is one of my favorite tastings of the year. I just love the fact that you can just waltz up to any table in any region and taste the best of the best wine. So really you can't go wrong at any section. But of course my game plan has always been go straight for Saint-Emilion.
Oh.
Next go to Pomerol, and then everything else.
Whatever you have time for the rest.
Because those two are high demand, very rare, the production is so low. You want to get in before the tables get very crowded. And then everything else, and then at the very end, because your palate is a little tired, you can have a little sauterne to kind of ease your way, out of the tasting. But it's so amazing to get right in front of the producers of the best vineyards and brands in Bordeaux. So I highly recommend that if you're not here already, come on down. If you're not here this year, come on down next year, because it's every year. Certainly in San Francisco and all over the world. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so great to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit more, why are those two your favorite region of Bordeaux?
Well, so I think for many of us, so studying Bordeaux was very difficult for me. It's very hard to get to a place where you feel like you have got a handle on the wines of the region, because especially for the wines of small areas with rare, expensive wines such as Saint-Emilion and Pomerol, those are kind of mysterious and hard to kind of wrap your mind around until you actually start tasting them. So even working in retail, opening hundreds of bottles of Bordeaux every year, I still felt like I don't really have the palate experience like I do with other regions. And so that's my educational game plan, is get to the wines that I've tasted the least. And I'm not the only one. Seems to be quite a popular strategy. It's not to say that the wines of the Medoc, Grave, I'm a huge fan of Pessac Léognan, personally love the Grave reds and whites. But when there's a rarity factor, as you know, you work with a lot of rare wines. If you're studying and learning and trying to get your palate, trained and your theory rounded out, go to the producer, talk to them. Why is Chateau Clinet this way?
Right.
And taste it, and just and those experiences really help you understand and weave everything together, and that experience stays with you a lifetime, rather than trying to memorize another flashcard. It's like, well, I spoke with the producer at Chateau Clinet, and this is what they said, and I've done that many times. It's like, well, the book says this, well, the producer says this, so I'm going to go with the producer.
Awesome, thank you. It's always great to hear story and strategy from someone who's so passionate and so knowledgeable in the wine industry. Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdoms with us. I'm going to go hit up the Saint-Emilion and Pomerol. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much, Angie. Cheers.
Hi, we've also ran into Ted Marco. He is a somm in the Bay Area for quite a while. Many of my clients and friends know him from Harris Steakhouse and most recently at Shelby's in Redwood City. He is probably one of the some who's one of the most passionate and the one that cares the most about people and wine. So I'm excited to hear how are you liking the tasting so far, and what are some of your standouts?
The 19 vintage has been very interesting. I feel like it's been across the board warm and fruit forward. Some of those decisions perhaps that were made came across as a bit more restrained and Brett, earthy driven, as those opposed to some others that have been a lot more fruit forward.
Nice.
Even this last one, if I may,
Yeah.
it came across quite fruit forward,
Yes.
and it came across with a lot of fruits, a lot of darker fruits, which were amazing. I really enjoyed my first tasting, and I always, when I think of Bordeaux, I start in terms of Pomerols. I love the Merlot grapes. They give a little bit of sense of a light chocolate, a little bit of a fuller and softer, smooth tannin, supple fullness.
That's interesting. You're the second one that told me that they like to start with the Pomerol region first. Is that like is the strategy to start with like the lighter grape varietal and moving on to the heavier one, or just your personal preference?
It is. I think it's much more so that what's going to be easiest on the palate to taste without getting it through so much more of the big, thick tannin, robust tannins that are a little bit more gripping.
Nice.
I feel like towards the end, that's where I want to go. Perhaps, and that's where I intend to go towards Pauillac.
Okay. Yeah, because rumor has it Pauillac is the region for the 2019 vintage, so you're saving that for last then.
Do you have some favorites yourself?
I do actually, but I'm gonna save that and share it with my in the video later.
Of course.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Ted. It was nice talking to you as always. And guess who else I ran into? This is Wei Wan. He is working for wine.com, one of the most passionate, knowledgeable, great storyteller. You will find him at any local tasting here in the Bay Area, and he's always with a smile and always kind to share his notes. I know the tasting just started, but can you tell us a little bit what you expect and what you're excited about for the 2019 vintage?
I love this tasting. I've been doing it for over 3 decades.
Right.
Both in France, in Bordeaux,
Nice.
and here in
Right.
San Francisco. I've even done it in other parts of the country as well. It's great tasting to get a good overview of the classified wines in Bordeaux.
Nice.
If you take your time and do it well, you get a lot of information here.
That's right.
It's the best.
Have you had a chance to taste much of the 2019? Because I know wine.com is a huge retailer, so
Right.
you guys probably got a lot of samples.
Oh yeah, well, not necessarily,
No.
but I have other samples, but not the Bordeaux as much. That's why I'm here.
Okay, that's cool. Was there anything that you, either from reading or from past experience, like which region are you the most excited about? Or which,
as a taster, I prefer not to get jaded by other media.
That's why I love him. He's always so fair and just trusts his palate and with an open heart. And so we'll have to try to catch you up before you leave to tell us
Okay.
what you think is the best. Thank you so much for your time, Wilfred. All right, guys, so far I start off on the left bank, starting from the top. I taste through a couple of wineries that's here from Saint-Estèphe, Pauillac, Saint-Julien, and Margaux. My impression so far of those 4 major villages from the left bank is I think Pauillac probably did the best in 2019. I feel like historically, whenever we have really big, warm, quote-unquote classical high rating year, Pauillac always stand out on top. But on some of the cooler year, if you actually remember my video from the previous vintage, when I did the 2014 vintage tasting, I thought Margaux did much better in a colder year. And this year, I will feel it's the complete opposite, where Pauillac does very, very well. It was definitely a great year for Cabernet Sauvignon. Whereas in Margaux, I felt like a lot of the wine seemed to me a little overripe, almost a little hinge on sweetness. There's a couple of chateaux I almost felt like I taste a little residual sugar in their wine. So it's not exactly kind of the classical Bordeaux that I personally enjoy drinking. So far, Pauillac is going really well. Saint-Estèphe has some of a really great wine. I think Saint-Julien did really well as well, but Saint-Julien as a region has always been one of those what we call small yet powerful vintage that has a lot of structure, a lot of muscle, and I feel like with a big vintage like 2019, it might need a couple more years in the bottle before they will really kind of set in and really start to drink fabulously. So let's now hop into the left bank and Murdoch and all the other region and see what is the best in the rest of the Bordeaux. All right, guys, we just got done with the tasting. Unfortunately, this year they're cutting off the tasting very quickly. We literally only have 2.5 hours, and a lot of the winery has actually left. So I didn't get a chance to really interview anyone, unfortunately, but I will have to say that after tasting through the region, we started out on the left bank, and I saw on the left bank Pouliac did the best, with Saint Julien being a little bit tied. But the overall winner, I think, of the 2019 vintage is definitely the right bank. Le Saint-Emilion region is fantastic. I think this season was just perfect for the Merlot grape. And one of the prime example is when I started going into the Passagleon region, where they kind of do equal parts between Cab and Merlot. A couple of the producers I talked to, they're using a higher percentage of Merlot this year because Merlot just did so well in the 2019 vintage. I find that very interesting. So if you're a huge fan of the 2019 Bordeaux, and let me know if you agree or you like the right bank more than the left bank, or if you disagree. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.